X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is your weekly X-Men podcast where we rank every X-Men story from A to Z.
I'm Adam.
And I am Adam. Guess what we're talking about?
I believe we are going to talk about some followers this week, right? Some very dutiful followers.
Yes, but not our followers like Brian
No.
Fleetwood, who went on over to patreon.com and dropped in as little as $2 to get an entire episode handcrafted around one of his suggestions. Thank you, Brian.
Now, this is a different kind of follower, mainly someone who is so devoted that they might even be described as an acolyte. So what was the request that's starting us off this week?
Dude, why do we not call our Patreon people our acolytes?
Because they shouldn't worship us.
Debatable. Very debatable, in fact.
Because if we did, we'd be worried that one of them would turn into Fabian Cortez.
That's right. Someone would try and murder me. Or you. Probably me.
Trying to bring down our asteroid M.
Oh, man. That would be nuts. That would be bananas. Guys, we're talking about the Acolytes because Brian Fleetwood, like I had mentioned, was so kind to go over to acolyte.com/Xavier Files and pitch in his $2 to get this story on our list. And that is Uncanny X-Men 300.
Yeah, with the sort of holographic background cover. I mean, we're clearly in the image age here.
The image age of comics are upon us.
Yeah.
Now, this is not by an image artist by any degree. This is, in fact, by a pretty classic artist. It's John Romita Jr. Yeah.
And this is in that age where like John Romita Jr. is doing Blood and Metal, and then he does his Uncanny run again. And I love this era of JR. It's so different from his original Uncanny run because at this point he's just drawing boxes on top of boxes on top of boxes for like machines and guns, and I just love it. It's such a weird aesthetic that
it's not as
really
blocky.
Fun.
It's not as blocky as he would get like a decade later.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think it still works without the over stylized stuff that some of the JR stuff can get to, but I think it works. And he's working off of a script written by professional comic book writer Scott Lobdell.
Now this does involve our good friends, the Acolytes. Who are the Acolytes, Zach?
Do you want me to say their names? Because there's so many.
No. It's kind of like
thank you, Adam.
All of the Dark Riders or something.
What a kindness you have given upon me. The Acolytes are the people who worship Magneto, like in a religious sense. I believe in our last episode, I referred to them as Magneto's praise band. And I thought about that today because I was editing that episode, a little peek behind the kimono, if you will. And I was like, I mean, they are.
Yeah, it's not that bad of a description. Unfortunately, they all dress very, very similarly. And
Similarly.
Yeah, and you really only need to know a couple of them. You need to know their absolutely awful leader, Fabian Cortez. Who is just the worst ponytail man that X-Men can provide.
He is a jerk boy.
Yeah. You have to know Amelia Vogt, who's got a history with Xavier and is kind of fun.
Yeah.
And then Frenzy's in here, right?
I mean, Frenzy's in here, but you don't have to know Frenzy until later. Like,
yes.
It's weird because Joanna Cargill, who would later go by Frenzy, and maybe previously, I forget when.
If she was Frenzy in X Factor too, I believe.
And she's not Frenzy in the act; she's just Cargill because they all go by last names. Or no, well, they jump between because like Uniscone is not her last name. Her last name is the Untouchable.
Right, because she's Unis's daughter? Is that?
Yeah, Unis has like several kids on several superhero teams. He has a kid on Alpha Flight.
I don't want to get too graphic here, but it does beg the question as to how Unis procreates. He is untouchable. How did that happen?
Damn it, Adam.
Just a question to keep you up at night tonight, folks.
It will.
So, I mean, do you want to give a quick synopsis of what happens in this story? It's a long one.
It is. This is a giant size.
We get 52 pages at $3.95, and
which is a steal even today.
Yeah, not too bad. What the heck is happening here?
The X-Men have to go to France for reasons. Mm-hmm. And then the Acolytes show up to fight the X-Men, kinda. And then one of the new Acolytes, who they go by Neophyte, and no one's really sure if that's his code name, because it wouldn't make sense for a code name, or if that's just what they're calling him, because they got that religious thing going on.
Right.
He gets like, yeah, all these people are evil. And then he meets a human, and he's like, oh, dang, humans are okay. Which begs the question, did he ever have human contact in his life before then?
Yeah, because he's a teenager. I mean, like, where's this dude been? Where you been?
He had a mom. I'm sure he had a mom. Anyway, and then he's like, oh, what? Oh, and then they find out that Fabian Cortez is actually a dirty bad boy.
Right.
Working for the Game Master, and he murdered Magneto, which Amelia Vogt is not thrilled with.
No, not at all. And Fabian kicks the crud out of Bishop, and then Wolverine straight up stabs him.
It doesn't stick. Fabian Cortez stays alive for too long.
Maybe a page or two later, he's okay, right?
Yeah. This introduces a lot of Acolytes too. Like Mellencamp and Spore and Senyaka.
Yes, but not the same Spore as the Wolverine cocaine story. So, we didn't have that to look forward to. Are the Kleinstock brothers here? I don't think they are, right?
Yeah, they're here. Harlan and Sven.
Are they?
They're here. Okay. Not that you could tell, because, again, they all dress alike. And that's a problem with the Acolytes, because their powers are not distinct enough, for the most part, to tell them apart.
Yeah.
So, like, who Joanna Cargill is, because she's the only black one.
Mm-hmm.
You know that who Mellencamp is, because he's the only lizard one. And you know who Senyaka is, because he doesn't show his face, because
it's kind of like a ninja.
No, it's worse. He's got an Arabic thing.
Oh, that's what's going on. I'm sorry. I'm glancing at this too fast, but he's the one with like the whips, right?
Look, Senyaka, the longer you look at Senyaka, the worse he becomes. But I mean, he's just there. He made for a cool action figure. So he's got that going for him, which is nice.
Yeah, and there's some cool moments spread out throughout this thing. Angel dragging Bishop through the sky is really fun. Jean Grey cuts loose on Mellencamp in this great scene.
That scene's dope.
Yeah.
That scene is super dope.
Iceman kind of powers up in a new way in here. And it's just, I love the illustrations in this. So this is a really fun issue to look at. I enjoy it, even if, it's basically just boils down to a giant fight scene between X-Men and Acolytes.
Yeah. It's got some baggage, like the Game Master.
Yes.
We didn't get a chance when we talked to Fabian. Not Cortez, Fabian Nicieza, who's a much better person than Fabian Cortez.
Yeah, we should have asked him about the upstarts.
We should have asked him about the Game Master so much, because I've just got a million questions.
Well, I mean, it doesn't sound like there's really a long-term, game plan with the Games Master, because the motives and the rules of whatever the game is shift. The upstarts roster shifts constantly, so it's a mess. But anyway, he kind of denies Fabian his upstarts points, right?
Which lets everyone know that maybe Magneto's not as dead as we thought.
Dun dun dun.
I'm
Sounds
glad
like
we did that at the same time. We didn't plan that.
it's like a fatal attraction.
Shut up. Come on.
Well, and this issue ends with a Brandon Peterson penciled epilogue with Ileana contracting the legacy virus. So we know where we're going from this point forward.
Yeah, it's gonna get very
in the
sad.
90s.
Remember a while back when we said that everything bad happens to Colossus?
Yes.
It's gonna continue.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. But I do think that, as landmark issues go, it's a nice one. It doesn't have like a real memorable story, but I'll revisit it just from the art alone. Where do you think this ranks on our giant list?
So my problem is I have no particular attraction to this issue one way or another.
Okay.
I think this
that's fair.
issue is perfectly vanilla.
Yes.
So I'm trying to look at some 90s-ish stuff. Like, to me, this isn't as good as X-Men Ghost Rider Brood Trouble in the Big Easy.
Okay.
Which is at 105 right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have like a lot of arcs. I mean, we're really talking about a very 90s story with some really cool JR art. So if those two things don't entice you, I don't think you're going to find that much here. But if either of those things sound attractive to you, you're going to enjoy it.
So can I throw this out here?
Yeah.
I think it might be better than X Factor Happenings in Vegas at 110.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I'm not convinced it's better than Cocaine. Look at your resigned
yeah, I mean,
wrong.
I've gone to bat for that story a couple times now, and I do think that it is just wacky enough to be more interesting. So yeah, I do think this might have a little bit more content to it than the A Day Like Any Other special edition X-Men story backup. So you think that's a good spot on the list for it?
Yeah, I think Uncanny X-Men 300, subtitled Legacies, but that's a bad subtitle, and we're not going to use it.
Yeah.
That's so generic. Comes in as our new number 110 on the list. But
nice.
Speaking of legacies, and this was not a segue that I planned on.
We're going to talk about X-Men Legacy, aren't we?
We're finally going to talk about X-Men Legacy. We're finally going to talk about Mike Carey. How have we gone 70 issues about this podcast and not brought up that Mike Carey's really good at X-Men?
Yeah, this is an interesting era too. So we're after Messiah Complex here, right?
Directly after Messiah Complex. This is the first arc in X-Men Legacy. This is X-Men Legacy 208 to 210. Subtitle to be determined when I type it into the Marvel Wikia.
Well, the first issue is titled From Genesis to Revelations. I don't know. Does this have like a larger name for the arc?
From Genesis to Revelations is the larger name for the arc. Oh man, that's worse. That's worse.
That's a long name.
Anyway, this is by Mike Carey writing, who Mike Carey wrote just a ton of X-Men, including some of my favorite stuff. Like, we haven't ranked Supernovas yet. Adam, have you read Supernovas?
No, but I've heard good things.
Supernovas is freaking dope. Supernovas is so good. I'll just give you a hint because we're not talking about Supernovas. But it's got that good Chris Bachalo art.
Ooh, okay, I'm sold.
It's got Rogue and Cable on a team with Mystique and Sabretooth and Iceman and the Omega Sentinel and one of Mastermind's daughters. I forget which one.
That sounds great. I'll check that out. Iceman
and Cannonball are there and they're friends. It's so good. It's great. I love Supernovas. I could talk about Supernovas at length, and eventually I will. But
any acolytes in that story? No acolytes?
No, but Joanna Cargill shows up a little bit later.
Oh, okay.
As kind of
she's
a lead
in this
up.
story as well.
Yeah. Mike Carey does a very good job at doing long form Claremontian storytelling.
Mhm.
which is one of the things I really like about him in this X-Men Legacy run and his previous adjectiveless X-Men run before this. Carey did a great job planting seeds and coming back to them later.
Yeah. Now we have a variety of different artists on here because the plot revolves around the fact that Bishop has basically just shot Xavier in the head. And
Not his best moment.
No. And the Acolytes have his body. So we're talking about Exodus, Frenzy, who else is here?
Amelia Voigt.
Yeah.
Omega
Amelia's
Sentinel.
there. Mhm.
Random is there.
Yeah.
And I think Tempo is there, but she doesn't do anything in this story.
Well, that's a shame.
Oh,
like
and
Tempo.
Uniscone. Unisone's there.
Yeah. So we have these Mindscape illustrators that take over. So we have Scott Eaton doing the reality. And then when we jump into the Mindscapes, the first issue is a real cool combo. We have JR back being inked by Klaus Janson. Who's on the other two? Greg Land and...
Greg Land is on the third one, and I believe it is Billy Tan. Yeah, Billy Tan on the second.
Okay. Yeah, so
with colors on the first issue by friend of the show, Christina Strain.
Yeah, which is really great. So we've got a little bit of variety in the artwork, and we're basically going back and forth between Xavier going back into his past and eventually getting into a Mindscape battle with Exodus. And then in the present, there's sort of an ongoing debate about Xavier's legacy versus Magneto's legacy and which one, deserves to continue into the future.
So I love this, and here's why. There's a big thing that happens in X-Men around this time about, hey, maybe Xavier sucks.
Yeah.
And there's some pretty clunky ways that they handle that. Deadly Genesis being easily the clunkiest, but even the stuff with Danger in Astonishing X-Men that we talked about, I don't know how well that works as far as demonizing Xavier. What Legacy does is not further demonize him. What it does is recontextualizes what were just Silver Age comics of, yes, of course, comic books can be whatever, and recontextualizes Xavier's actions into a more serious, more down-to-earth, more reality and consequence-based approach in 2008. And I think that is fascinating because you get scenes like Moira McTaggart calling out Xavier like, you're just building a child army. What are you doing, Charles?
Yeah. And it also starts to, when you talk about recontextualize, it starts to talk about this idea of Xavier's dream and even Magneto's dream as perhaps both being irrelevant. And that maybe we need to move forward and think in new ways about, what the future of mutant kind should be, which I think is really a fascinating concept.
It's not only fascinating, it's something that the books really pushed during this era. I mean, you got think pieces on a bunch of comics websites saying, well, maybe Cyclops is the new Magneto and Wolverine's the new Xavier. And it was never that simple and never that cut and dry because they shifted the paradigm. It wasn't about we must have integration at all costs versus we must have domination at all cost. It was, what means are you going to use to get your ends? And that, I think, is a much more fascinating and interesting way to approach things than just the sheer black and white of Xavier and Magneto. And this story real smartly uses all this old continuity to come to that conclusion. It uses not just the shady past from Xavier stuff being recontextualized, but the fact that all this is happening because Magneto's acolytes want someone to lead them now that Magneto's been depowered. It's super good. Like, that shows, hey, both these guys were real screw ups. Maybe they shouldn't be the people you're putting on a pedestal. Maybe they had some decent ideas, but they don't make sense in execution. And that level of nuance is missing in so many X-Men comics. And dang, is it good to see here.
Yeah, I really enjoy in the third issue when Exodus is going after Xavier. He's basically showing him a litany of crimes, if you will, like things that have happened to the X-Men because he formed the X-Men. And I think the story kind of gives Xavier a little bit of an out because he's saying like, well, I got shot in the head, so I'm not really Xavier. So those aren't really my crimes.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like he's still being held to account for all of these things that have happened, all of these people who have died because of what he thought was right. And it's really effective. I think it makes for a really good narrative.
Yeah. I don't think X-Men Legacy is perfect. I think there is some stuff that doesn't always work with it as a unit of comics, but I think this is a really interesting start and a really good way to look at the X-Men. I think Carey does a great job with it. It's not my favorite thing he's ever written, but going back at this, I was honestly surprised how much I enjoyed it rereading it.
Yeah, the artwork is terrific too. I think Eaton's work is really good, and even the flashback stuff. Even though it's different artists in each of the issues, it's really
wish
cool.
It was Romita for all of them because
that would have been great.
He is stylistically so far away from Eaton, and he has the bona fides of being a classic X-Men artist. TM.
Yeah,
that like it works really well in a way that. I think Philip Tan stuff works pretty well because of the coloring on it and the way that it's presented differently. And the Greg Land stuff doesn't, just mostly because Greg Land was such a contemporary artist of 2008 that doesn't.
It's similar to Eaton's work. I will say that I am not always the biggest Land fan.
Well, who is?
But I think that the work he does in these issues for the flashback scenes does actually do a pretty good job of almost looking like John Cassaday a little bit. Like you can see that influence on some of the panel work that he's doing. I'm not always a big fan, but I think it works for this story. So I think we're both in agreement. This is pretty good.
It's pretty good. It's worth reading. Like sometimes we say it's worth reading because it's so weird that you kind of just need to take it in. I think this is worth reading because it's good.
Yeah. I think it's pretty solid, and it looks really good too. So we have Messiah War at number 48
on our top heavy list.
Yeah, Messiah Complex is all the way up at number 8.
It's not as good as Messiah Complex.
No. I don't think so either. But I do think it's pretty solid. So what's a good comparison here in terms of where we're at in the list?
I think that this is better than Giant Size X-Men number 1.
Okay. I think that's a good place to start.
I think for me, it's better than that AVX Sinister story.
All right. Where do we have that at? We've got
37.
37. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm just reorienting myself on the list. I don't know if...
I'd say my absolute ceiling is E is for Extinction Secret War. I don't think it's as good as that at 32.
Yeah, I wasn't even going to put it above Morlocks. I feel like Morlocks has a little bit more ingenuity than this.
Well, then I think we go right below it because I do think this is probably better than What If Wolverine Was Lord of the Vampires, which is...
Yeah, I would say so. Even though that is a heck of a fun story.
Oh my gosh. I kind of want to reread that. I didn't reread that during the spooky month.
Yeah.
Because I was reading that time that he was Lord of the Vampires during Inferno and being just sorely disappointed.
Yeah, that was a disappointment. The sequel really didn't live up.
But, hey, speaking of disappointment.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah.
The last story that we have on our list.
Oh Jesus. Well, I gotta compliment you because I think we talked about this briefly in another episode, and it's one of these.
We found out about this on the show. It's recorded. You can go back to episode whichever one we talked about Magneto on.
Yeah, so this is a real live miniseries that Marvel kind of discounts in their volumes of Magneto, but it is a real thing. What volume should this be? Volume 2?
No, this is volume 1.
This is volume 1. Okay.
Yes,
all right.
because they, as far as things released that were named Magneto, they had a few years before this Magneto issue 0, which was a lot of weird reprints. And I think like a 4-pager or something like that. That was just maybe it was Gabrielle Haller, some sort of UNE person saying, "Hey, this is Magneto. He kind of sucks. Here's all the evil things he's done. Maybe we should do something about it. Go check out Fatal Attraction coming out this summer."
Got it. Well, this is not that. This is about everybody's. Should I say everybody's favorite? I don't know if anybody's favorite is Joseph.
I've encountered a lot of X-Men fans over time. I feel like I have been at a hub of X-Men fandom.
And
I've heard a lot of fans talk about a lot of favorite characters that I don't understand. Ain't nobody ever come to me and said, "Nah, Joseph actually slaps." No one has said that. So this 4-issue Magneto series about Joseph is just jeez. Hey, who writes this?
Okay. So it is scripted by Jorge Gonzalez. However, the 4 issues are plotted by none other than Peter Milligan of X-Statix fame.
At this point, Shade the Changing Man fame.
Right. And then we have pencils by Kelly Jones, inked by John Beatty. Wow. This sure is something. The fact that this even exists is a testament.
Should we ground this? I just realized we should probably ground people on who Joseph is, because we've just been saying, man, Joseph sucks for a little bit without explaining who or what Joseph is.
Yes.
Because I think the context is important.
Magneto is supposed to be dead. And he
got Fatal Attraction.
Right.
Did.
Here is a young, long-haired version of Magneto that has shown up in Uncanny, I believe. This is sort of what we're getting into the beginning of, like, the Maggot era, correct? Like,
this is a little bit before the Maggot. This is the Onslaught era.
Yeah. Okay. And Joseph is Joseph. He doesn't think that he's anything other than that, but he's slowly realizing that he might be Magneto, correct?
Yes, I believe the authorial intent at this point is that he was actually Magneto, but after the Professor Xavier mind wipe from Fatal Attractions, he was Magneto, but good and young and hot.
Yes. However, he eventually turns out to not be Magneto. He is a clone. Yeah. It's a clone. All right. So let's just start with the fact that Joseph is supposed to be a younger version of Magneto. Throughout this series, he is illustrated as almost a grotesquely looking middle-aged man wearing a giant white wig.
Look, Kelly Jones is known probably most famously for, like, Batman Red Rain.
Okay.
Those vampire Batman comics.
Yeah.
But what the heck, Kelly Jones? Your art is not good in this. And I want it to be, but it's not. You've made Joseph scary.
There are some really interesting stylistic things that I feel like he's borrowing from Joe Quesada here and there, just in the terms of his line work or the way he constructs a face. But it is interesting to me that all 4 issues, they continually refer to Joseph as lad, as if he is this, like, young person, and he just looks like this steroid hulked out old dude. It doesn't make any sense.
So Adam, what does Joseph do in this 4-issue series?
Okay, if I was going to distill these 4 issues down to nothing, it would be Joseph is going on a quest to find remnants of it's not Asteroid M, is it? It's something, whatever.
Avalon,
Well, yes, Avalon. Thank you.
which was new Asteroid M.
Yes, he encounters the Acolytes, including Exodus and a now newly alive again Fabian Cortez and Amelia Vogt. And he basically spends the 4 issues saying, I'm Magneto. Wait, no, I'm not. Yeah, wait, I'm Magneto. Wait, no, I'm just Joseph. And that happens like multiple times in an issue.
Right.
And it's just dumb.
Also, he stops a nuclear strike by putting the bomb slightly underground, which I think might actually make things worse.
Ugh, yeah.
If I know my seismology right, he just caused several earthquakes and then irradiated a lot of soil.
Mm-hmm. It's not Joseph doesn't come across as a real smart person.
No, he's super dumb, right?
He just
and
comes off as a real
to be.
Yeah.
He's just a dum-dum in these. He's a real like knives. You know how they're supposed to be real sharp and easy to cut through things?
Yeah.
Joseph's like that, but he struggles with butter.
And there are just these weird details like Fabian or who is it? Exodus is like torturing Amelia Vogt in this and like puts a face hugger on her sort of like
what the heck?
Like there's just these weird asides in here that don't really make any sense.
Larry Trask is here and he executes a dude, but it doesn't really come up.
Yeah, and then fires nukes on the Acolytes, and Joseph has to save the day. And when it wraps up, the series is bookended by these weird conversations he's having with Rogue about like, well, is
who
he
he was hooking up with at the time?
Yeah,
because Age of Apocalypse was popular.
Is he really Magneto? Is he going to come back to the X-Men? And he like goes on this like very bizarre, dumb misadventure, and then comes home and is like back to the X-Men. She's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm just Joseph. And she's like, oh, great. That's how it ends.
This is a weird series. I didn't know what I was getting into. It's always surprising to me when I find an X-Men comic that I don't recognize and I don't have the slightest clue what it's going to be.
Yeah, and it's bad.
Oh, this is so bad. This is good being forgotten in 1996.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because it really has none of the hallmarks of anything you'd want to associate with Magneto except for, the worst of it, which is like you don't really want to hang out with the Acolytes as they hang out with Joseph, who can't decide who he is.
Yeah, in Exodus, who's a character that I actually tend to like. Like I liked him and his whole deal in that legacy story.
Right. Yeah.
That we just talked about.
Here.
Yeah, he's the worst. Fabian Cortez is also the worst. Everyone's the worst.
Even Vogt is sidelined here in a way that makes her like deeply uninteresting. So it's unfortunate.
The face hugger, the fact that Joseph makes out with her after Fabian Cortez said, hey, yeah, Magneto was hooking up with her. You should make sure you make out with her. And he's like, well, okay.
Yeah,
and she's
like,
the heck, dude? That's good. It's not supposed to be good. I don't think that Peter Milligan or Jorge Gonzalez knew that was going to be very funny or great, but it did turn out that way in just this bizarre sense. This is a bad comic. It's just...
Yep.
Like, I'm a real proponent of the Maggot era because it kicked off professional comic book writer Scott Lobdell from the X-Books, who he was on for just too long, and said, we're going to try something different. And the reason they had to do that is because crap like Joseph was a major plot point and drug down the X-Books so much. Like, that absolute garbage between like the Onslaught era is everything you've heard about it and more. It's the bad 90s comics. Like,
yeah, it's rough.
We've gotten a good appreciation for that, let's say up to Age of Apocalypse 90s comics, the Fabian Quartet or the Fabian Nicieza era, as some would put it. But then Fabian got fired, and then Lobdell was left to his own devices, and things just went off so many rails. That's when you get Noseless Wolverine. That's when you get Joseph.
Yeah,
Oh.
I mean, you gotta appreciate the fact that like they thought this was marketable. You know, like we're still clearly living in an era where like X-Men comics are, I guess, selling a certain amount because why not budget for a Magneto miniseries? But can you imagine like actually picking this up issue 1 and thinking you were going to be reading about Magneto and getting this? It's a huge disappointment.
It's so bad. I would hate it so much.
Yeah.
Hey,
All right.
we got a list where we rank things that we love and hate.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this.
Okay.
Not only would I rather read The Morlocks Take Manhattan again, I would definitely rather read the Phalanx Covenant Life Signs with Douglock and probably the Shatterstar Saga, which is at 159 right now.
I would rather read Eve of Destruction than read this again. This is bad.
Okay, I'm gonna say this. I'd rather read God Loves Man Kills 2 again.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I don't know. Like I really am looking quite low here because this is just irredeemable in a lot of ways. I think when we get to the bottom of this list, we start to talk about the absolute offensive quality of some of these books. I don't think this traipses there.
But
so for it to go into, I think it's worse than the 100th anniversary special. And I'm okay with that. I mean, if you think it's worse than God Loves Man Kills 2, I'm comfortable with it going below. I don't think it delves into those bottom 3 where we're just like completely offended by it. This is just a garbage comic book.
This really is a garbage comic book. That's the thing. This is bad trash. Like,
yeah.
It's not NYX where I feel gross after reading it. I feel confused and sad that I spent my time doing that.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right. So this is our new 165.
This is our new 165, a comic that I felt gross and sad about spending all of my time doing that. It's Magneto. Hey, speaking of which, hey, Adam.
Yes.
It's an X-Men update. This is an X-Men update. I'm done.
Wow.
It's over. It is finished. I read it all. It's all done. 75 issues of a comic that the best issue would... I'm just going to throw it out here. The best issue of X-Men is maybe is better than IVX at 146.
Well, no one's requested it yet, so we still haven't had the opportunity to rank any X-Men.
Oh
but
my gosh.
I applaud your tenacity in completing this cursed project of yours.
Can I tell you 2 things that happened?
Yeah, go ahead.
Number 1, Mysterio. You know, Mysterio, the Spider-Man villain with the fishbowl on his head.
Yeah.
He tricks X-Man into thinking that he created Grayville, which is this Smallville-ass kind of perfect reality, so that because he knows that Nate Gray and Spider-Man are friends, so that he can get Spider-Man's secret identity.
Oh my God, what?
It's not good, but that's some Marvel Comics right there. Like, I'm on board with that level of dumb. It's not a good comic, but I love Mysterio trying that.
All right, so that's 1. What's 2?
Number 2, have you heard about the Shaman era?
No, I don't know anything about X-Men.
Okay,
0.
so the here's what happened at issue 63 of X-Men. Warren Ellis got given the reins of 3 Marvel Comics X books. X-Man, X-Force, and Generation X. And he pitches a new direction for all of them.
Oh, this is when the character design switches, right?
Yeah, this is when he gets that booby tattoo.
Right.
Most people call that area the chest when it's especially on a male. But yeah, Nate Gray gets his booby X, and he becomes what he calls the shaman of the mutant race, which doesn't make any sense because all he does is say, hey, this mutant has a problem. I guess I'll go hang out with them for an arc. The Authority shows up, though. That's the thing. So Warren Ellis pitches a comic where another comic that at the time he is currently writing also crosses over with it. A comic he's writing for a different company.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's not Marvel.
Nope, that's Image at the time?
And that's,
did DC own the Wild Storm at that point?
That's a great question.
It
is interesting that. All right,
wait. What's Jim short for? Hold on. That's the first question.
DC
James. When did James Lee sell the Wild Card universe or Wild Storm universe to DC?
1999. So it's 98 into 1999.
Okay, so this would have been right about that time where like the Authority was a big deal. Yeah. So there's a weird unofficial DC Marvel crossover here.
That's wild.
None of it's good. It's all that part at least is deeply interesting. It's badness. Anyway, X-Man's horrible and I hate it. And
I'm worried that Tom is going to send, like, these volumes are going to appear like a cursed tome on my doorstep. I'm so scared.
I mean,
please don't do this to me. I don't want to read it.
Here's what you have going for you. I'm about to have a kid. As we record this, I've probably had a kid for a while now, and I'm sure Lincoln is great at this point. But right now, I ain't got time to ship you what is some very heavy books.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
I said now. Christmas is coming up. I think this is December. It's December as we're listening to this, so we'll see what happens.
Don't do it, Zach. Don't do it.
We'll see. Anyway, that's been what may be the final X-Man update. I'm just kidding. We've got an Age of X-Man upon us.
Yeah, we're entering the age. I think we'll have more.
So we'll see what happens with that. But I think that does it for this episode.
Yeah, that was good.
I liked it. This was a weird pitch, but I think it all worked out.
Mm-hmm. Good
anyway,
stuff.
I want to first of all, before we close out, I want to bring it down for a second. And I want to thank Brian Fleetwood because he went over to patreon.com and became one of our Battle of the Atom acolytes. He pitched in at least $2 and he said, I want you guys to talk about Uncanny X-Men 300 and talk about Seamus Mellencamp. And we did that. And I hope Brian feels like his $2 were well spent because I enjoyed my time here. And I hope Brian did too.
Oh, man.
If you want to be like Brian, you can go over to patreon.com, pitch in there. If you don't even want to pitch in at the $2 a month level, the $1 a month level gets you access into the Battle of the Atom book club, where we give you early warnings on all of the new stuff that we're talking about week after week after week after week. So you'll get to know and maybe read along with us, which is pretty cool. There's other tiers and other things. And if you want to give us all of your paycheck, yeah, I mean, look, that's cool. Be more responsible of your money in that scenario. But we've got different tiers of support. And it actually legitimately does super help out. If you can't help out fiscally, I understand. There's two things you could do. You could go onto iTunes and give us a rating and review because that'll help people find the show. But more than that, tell your buddy. You know that one guy that you talk about X-Men with? Say, hey, these people talk about Magneto and his acolytes, and it was really fun, and I enjoyed it, and maybe you would too. Share the love of this podcast, because Adam and I share it on Facebook, and the only people who like those episodes are my grandma, which is fine, but she's not in the listening audience. Otherwise, you can find me online at Xavier Files. It's where I have all the latest X-Men news and all that other stuff. Also, Xavier Files on Twitter. Hey, Adam, where can people find you online?
Guys, you can always follow me on Twitter at Arthur Stacy. Through December, we'll still get new pages of Bish and Jube's Attack on the Mansion on every X-Men Monday. And check out my collaboration with Retcon X, The Division, on SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Music.
And that does it for this episode. Next week, we're going back to school to prove to Dad that we aren't fools as we talk about stories about the X-Men just as fun teens going to school and doing teen things. And that one's going to be really fun. But until then, this has been Battle of the Atom, and we hope you survived the experience.